talk about this morning is a little bit about my experience, my trip, and my new life in Israel. I'll go through some pictures, I'll show you a few videos, and I'm going to focus on what brought me to decide that I want to live in Israel, live my life in Jerusalem. What made me decide that I wanted to go into the military and serve there, which I just finished my service after 2 years. And a little bit more about Israeli politics, Israeli life, and then afterwards open it up to questions, because I'm sure there are people here who might have some questions about Israel and how things work over there, how we're connected. Is it working? Why not?
There you go.
Okay, so how did this start? I was born and raised in Benton Harbor, Michigan, small town, not very different from Paloma, and the fact that there are not a lot of Jews in the area. So me growing up Jewish was very difficult. I didn't know what that meant. My synagogue has, I think, less than this amount of people every one of our services. And so for me to learn what it was to be Jewish, I went to summer camps. I went to a summer camp in Wisconsin with my sister, my brother came. This is my sister here on the left. And we started to learn what it is, and what it means to be Jewish, and what it means to be Zionist. Zionist is somebody who believes that there should be an Israeli state, a Jewish state. So, over years and years of going to the summer camp, they finally convinced me that maybe I should try to take that step and see what it is to live over there. So I went over for a one program that was with our federation, a free trip, that brought me over there for 10 days to travel around, to experience a little bit about the taste of Israel, to learn what it is about the roots there, and the religious foothold that it has in Jerusalem for everybody. We traveled around the Christian sites, the Jewish sites, the Muslim sites, and we traveled all across Israel, and we got to get our first taste. And I have a short clip here that my friend made.
Daniel, before you go on,
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe we cut the lights, if we might be able to...
window.
Oh, is that
But
what we're getting?
we can try to
If we shut these,
It helps.
does that help?
Yeah. And probably the sun's coming right in.
Yeah, we are getting out.
So I have a short video here that my friend, my closest friend, Katie Clayton, made just when I came back, that talks about her connection to Jerusalem, how hard it was for her to decide if she was good enough for Jerusalem.
And she is from our community, so
Yeah.
she's from Benton Harbor.
That's your phone.
Everything's working just perfectly this morning.
That's the way it is, isn't it?
Murphy's Law.
Did you turn the hot back on?
Yes.
Okay. Alright, well we're going to skip through that because it doesn't want to pop up.
Maybe it's not because I'm videoing it
Maybe,
too.
but that's okay. So basically what the video shows is a girl my age comes to Israel for the first time at 16, and I think she's not good enough for Jerusalem. She says that she's not religious enough, she didn't really go to services, she didn't really go to a summer camp, she didn't know what it was to be religious or spiritual, and she decided that she wasn't holy enough, she wasn't special enough, and she couldn't go to Jerusalem and feel like one of her daughters. And she went to Jerusalem, and we walked up to the Western Wall, one of the most holy sites in the Jewish faith. And a good friend of hers carried her all the way up to the wall, and there are around hundreds of women that are all praying together. And she felt at home, and she decided that maybe she was good enough, and maybe that wasn't even a concept, that Jerusalem is for everybody. If we can get it working later, maybe. So then I started weighing the option. After a full summer in Israel, I started thinking, do I want to come back to the States and go into college? Do I want to take out all that debt? Do I want to start the American lifestyle? Or do I want to see if there's something else out there? I never had anything against America. I never noticed having a problem growing up here, going to high school. But I realized that there are other options out there for me. So here you see some pictures, some hikes that I did in the desert. All cactus behind me mostly. the donkeys on our farm in the north. It was a very different lifestyle than what I was used to here. And over a few months, I finally decided that I wanted to give this a try. I wanted to live in Israel. Before that, I had to kind of clear my mind. So I traveled the world. Went to New Zealand and I lived there for 7 months. Traveled to Thailand and I lived there for 2 months. I lived with evangelical Christians in New Zealand that guided us through to their home groups and showed us beautiful new ideas and new parts of their faith. We were in Thailand and people in their temples, and I learned really a lot about different types of lifestyles and how these people get along. And not that the American dream, again, is a bad thing, but there are other ways to do it as well. Went on hikes across the country, 4 or 5 days, without a shower, without a house, without a warm meal, other than what we could heat up there. Worked on farms there with the natives and other people from the islands. We spent Christmas with them. These guys are from Vanuatu, which is an island right next to New Zealand. And they don't speak very much English. However, all of their hymns are in English. So they would come and sing to us carols on Christmas, and we could understand everything they were saying, at least when they sang the songs. It's really interesting for us.
So he was a homeless migrant worker.
Yes.
I mean,
I was part of a program that we paid a small bit in the beginning, and they gave us a pamphlet full of names. And these are people all across the country that would host Israelis for a night or two for free. And in the end, we found people like this family here that had this hostel, which they hosted us in their house, in their guest bedroom. She fed us dinner almost every night. We lived there for 2 months. And she would only charge us if we were working at the time and we thought, it was appropriate. She wouldn't take any extra money from us. So we worked picking cherries, we worked on sweet potato fields, and started working on the apricot season right before we left.
but really funny, I'm sorry. You gotta tell about when you first got there
To
to New Zealand. When you got there, you got picked up by these all non-speaking from all over.
Oh,
First
okay.
meal.
So when I first got to New Zealand, I looked before and I found this house that hosted people for a day or two. So we took a bus down to this house, and people who picked us up came from, I think, 11 different countries, all living in this big hostel-like place, little bitty rooms in the side of their barn, and the big meal, you remind me, what was at the meal?
The pig?
Oh yeah, well they had a pig at the table, yeah. This is not the first time it happened. We'd open up the oven at somebody else's house to make dinner, and there was a pig head just sitting there. So yeah, and if you don't know, we don't really eat pork.
And they told you how they prepared this pig earlier in the day.
Yeah, they talked. Yeah,
butchered it and made it.
and it was very special for us, and not for us. But, there were 11 people there, and when I was working on the farm, we also had 11 different nationalities. And while working on the farm, also we had people from China, from Japan, from Malaysia, Ireland, Mexico, Thailand, and Israel, and a few others.
How did you communicate?
Well, they all spoke English, or at least some form, and I guess that was the reason they couldn't come here and work, or to New Zealand. But yeah, everyone throughout the day would be speaking their own languages. And this is how I had to practice my Hebrew, because I would speak with the girlfriend that I was with at the time. Speak Hebrew together so that we could get along and tell secrets, I guess. This is a big dinner that we had. This is the family. The mother, Andrea, and her husband, which for the life of me I couldn't remember his name, it feels terrible. But he's a pastor at a Baptist church there, or a pastor, right? And she's German, another Israeli. He's a lawyer from Mexico that just finished his motorcycling trip across Europe. Here I am, and the girlfriend's parents. So we had this huge dinner all the time with them. We celebrated Christmas with them. And these people just took care of us and gave me the opportunity to learn about their culture. So this is all part of my weighing the options. Do I want to come back to the States, get back into my comfortable lifestyle, or do I want to try to find something different? And there's the bluest water in the world in New Zealand, so the cleanest water. Okay. I decided that the next step for me was to make Aliyah. Aliyah means moving up. And so moving up for us means moving to Israel, going back to the Holy Land, going back to our roots. So I decided to find a program here called Nefesh B'Nefesh, Spirit by Spirit, connecting souls. and go to Israel. It was not easy. It means picking up everything I have, moving away from my family, from everything I know, I was accepted to U of M, I was supposed to go to the business school. Everything was really set forward for me. And I wanted to try something different. And making Aliyah doesn't just mean immigrating, moving to another country. It means that within the next year I need to draft into the military. So this was on my mind from before I made this decision. And it wasn't easy. I was raised in a military family. Both my mother and father served here. My father was an officer for 20-some years. My mother served in Desert Storm. So I came from a military family, and to me, that was enough, to be honest. But all of my friends in Israel served in the military. At 18, every man and woman has to serve. Women for 2 years at least, and men for 3. If a woman wants to go into a combat position, she can also do 3 years, and many do. So I wanted to be like them. I didn't want to get through on the easy track, just come in and start a new life. So I moved to Jerusalem. I studied for 6 months Hebrew with Russians in the north, and then moved to Jerusalem. That's how I learned my Hebrew, and now I'm 100% fluent. I moved to Jerusalem, the holy city, and everything just kind of fell together. It's about a 2-hour bus ride from the north where I used to live down to Jerusalem. And on the way in, you go up these mountains, and you go around these windy roads, and you finally get up to the summit of Jerusalem. It's about 1,400 meters high, 3,000, almost 4,000 feet. And the whole ride up, even if you fell asleep on the bus, or if you were in your car and you weren't paying attention, suddenly something just awakens every time. I've been living there now for 6 years in Israel. Not Jerusalem the whole time, but every time I ride into Jerusalem, something just moves in my stomach, and it's somewhere special. So I lived there for another 6 months. I still lived there until I moved back here, and I drafted into the Army. What does that mean? They sent me off to a special course for new immigrants and started to teach me what are my options. What would be best for me, and what would be best for them. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, is the Israeli military. It's all of the branches together. It's a little bit different than here in the States. It's based off of more of a British military standard. But Air Force, Navy, and Army are all part of the IDF, or Tzahal in Hebrew. And these were my first few months in the Army. In the beginning, they sent me up here with all of these other soldiers that all just moved to the country. So you see here, they're French, they're Moroccan, they're Israeli, they're American, Canadian, I think I already said French, and some other South American countries. Again, roughly speaking English, if at all, or we would have to get along with the Hebrew that we had learned in the last year, which gave us a good reason to practice. We all came together, all from different backgrounds, some of them religious, some of them not religious at all, some of them just came because their parents moved into the country, they didn't want to draft, but they had to. And we were brought into this place for a month in intensive, wake up in the middle of the night and march army. They taught us Hebrew, they taught us to use our weapons, but mostly they taught us about every unit that is possible to get into in the Army. Each commander came from his active duty for a 1-month course to teach us what we could do. If it was Air Force, it was Navy, it was anti-air, it was tanks, armor, artillery, anything. After that, I went to my regular basic training. I decided I wanted to get into anti-air defense, which is the Iron Dome, the Patriot missile, and the Hawk anti-aircraft missile. And they sent me up with another 40 soldiers. The entire course was about 300. 40 soldiers, not one of them speaks a lick of English. Okay, some of them do, but really that's how it felt. None of them knows what it means to be from another country, or to not go home every weekend and have your parents do your laundry for you, or have to cook for yourself, or any of these things. I'd say, hey, why don't you come over and hang out this weekend? No, I haven't seen my mom for a week. Aw. I'm sorry, it's been half a year, but okay. So I got to learn a lot from these guys. These are Israeli-born soldiers. 18, all of them, if not maybe a few 19. No idea what they want in their life, what they want to study. They got a letter in the mail and they showed up. Now, most of them into this unit that I drafted into didn't want to be there. They want to be in the elite combat units. However, to get there, you have to have a high profile physically, and if you're an only son, your parents have to agree. You have to get a signature from your parents that you will serve in a combat unit. So a lot of these guys are only sons that their parents didn't sign. It's still a combat position, but it's not infantry. And a lot of them, they don't want to be there. So as much as I got there thinking, I'm going to learn what it is to be an Israeli, I'm going to learn what it is to want to fight for my country, because in the beginning, I wasn't sure if that was my path, I ended up teaching them. Because they didn't want to be there. And they didn't care. They wanted to move to America. They asked me, what are you doing here? You could be in Miami right now. You could be traveling across the States. You know, it's cheaper there. Gas is 7 times more expensive in Israel. So everything else kind of goes with that. We talked the other day, price of chicken is $6 a pound or $7 a pound.
We paid 99 cents.
We pay 99 cents here, yeah. It's not easy to live there. Economically, it's very difficult. There's not housing. And we're at war every day. It's not easy. And these people see it only from that point of view. So they would ask me every day, why are you here? Why don't you go back? Go to school in the States. Travel around the beaches. And for a long time I didn't have an answer to them. Really, why not? I remember when I was working in the farm in the beginning, they came to me and they said, are you getting paid to even do any of this? And I said, no. Why? Go back to the States, make your minimum wage there is, higher, everything's better. And I never really had a good answer. I felt like it was right. Until later on when I was in my commander school. And we'll get to that. Over here on the right is when I finally started my academy. They sent me off to a base pretty much in one of my first weeks in the middle of what we call the West Bank, in the settlements. We were in a military base surrounded by Bedouins and Arabs that are less friendly towards Israel. Put me in a guard tower for 3 hours at a time, and we're the only combat soldiers on this base. The rest of them are all what we call jobniks, the guys who work behind the desk, or the guys who work with supplies. And we're the only combat guys, 6 of us, guarding this whole base. And if anything happens, they send us in. So that's my first job. A little bit of pressure. So during my training, I was placed into the Iron Dome. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a second. But the Iron Dome is a unit that I served in. It's an anti-rocket missile defense system. Okay? Difference between a rocket and a missile has navigation. A rocket has propulsion, will just be sent to one direction, and it will land where it lands. A missile has navigation, and it can decide where to hit. At this moment, the enemies of Israel don't use missiles against them, or haven't, so we're lucky. And we can use this system. But YouTube put out a video, and they have some numbers. They're not 100% accurate, but they give you a good idea.
The Iron Dome anti-missile shield is a defense system used to counter short-range rocket attacks. Capable of intercepting missiles from between 4 and 70 kilometers, it's designed to perform in all weather conditions. The first Iron Dome battery was installed in March 2011 near the southern Israeli city of Beersheba, some 40 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. Several others have since been deployed in the south of the country to combat rocket fire from the Palestinian territory. Military experts say a total of 13 are needed to completely defend Israel from short-range attacks. Enemy artillery fired from within the 70-kilometer radius is detected by the Iron Dome's mobile tracking radar. The missile type is identified, its path monitored, and the data sent to a weapon management and control unit which calculates the likely point of impact. If the missile is heading towards a populated or built-up area, it decides to intercept. The incoming targets are detonated in mid-flight and within a matter of seconds by the system's missile firing unit. The Israeli army says 75 to 90% of attempted interceptions are successful at an estimated cost of $50,000 a ton.
So their only line of defense were the sirens that would go off, and hopefully you had about 15 to 20 seconds to run into a shelter. Now, okay, let's say that these shelters are set up all along the streets. In every block you have a shelter, and you can get into them. No one's going to get hurt. But think about a day that 30 times you have to run into that shelter. Now think about this going on for a year. No one can get any work done. Life stops. It's no longer a war that you can create new ammunition, you can work in your factories, you can support it. You have to be sitting in a shelter all day. The Iron Dome gives us that peace of mind for people to go into the shelter and to come out knowing that they're protected. It gives the people a way to continue their lifestyle even though they're living in turmoil and war and stress every day. And they know that they're protected because of this system. And also, it gives the politicians more time to think. if every day these rockets landed in Tel Aviv and killed, hundreds of people and destroyed buildings and monuments, immediately we would send soldiers in there and we would start a war that are going to cause casualties on more civilians on both sides. So instead, they have time to think a strategy that will cause the least amount of casualties and stop the war as quickly as they can. Any other questions on the Iron Dome? Before? Yeah.
How long it's made by Israel then, right?
It's a joint operation from a program called Raphael in Israel and Aegis, it's called, in the States. There are a lot of the funds do come from the States, from the government, and from other programs, but it is created and manufactured in Israel. And actually, Israel is now going to start selling it to the States. Now here, I don't think we really need it against Canada or Mexico, but this is a mobile unit that can be set up in a military base, say in Afghanistan or Iraq, and it can protect from rocket fire that will come in from outside areas.
I have
Do you
a
want
question.
again?
How many missile launchers are there per Iron Dome battery?
Okay, so the exact number I won't say.
Right.
However, where I am now, which is a known base, there are usually at least 2. Okay, but you
That's
can,
it.
yeah. So, but there can be more. I mean, in the north, we can spread them out across an entire barrier. Launchers is not what we lack and what we need to build. It's more the manpower and the command centers. The radars, the antennas, all of those things that cost a lot. The launcher is expensive, the missiles are expensive, but all of that together is what makes a battery work.
And the command center has, say, 2 missile launchers.
Yeah, the command center is in the center. I'm talking about so you have a city. If we want to defend all of Jerusalem, you would put on the northern side, because the rockets are coming from the south, a command center where all the officers would sit, and you'd have launchers and 2 or 3 locations on the northern side, so any missile that comes in. You'd also put it in the back in case they went too high, because we usually intercept them on their way down to intercept it as it comes closer to the city. Any other questions on that?
How often do these missiles how often are they launched at Israel?
At Israel?
Yeah.
So during the operation, we're talking about hundreds per day. Okay, and the highest, I think there was 1,000 in one day. Now this is during an operation. I don't call it a war because a war is between 2 nations. And we're talking about the Palestinian organization of a terrorist group. We're not at war against the Palestinians. We're not at war against all of the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. We're against war with Hamas, this terrorist group that lives there, that thinks that their way to peace is by killing and getting into their form of heaven through their radical Islam beliefs. But before the operation started, we still had mortar fire and rocket fire into Israel, 2 or 3 every day or other day. And this is before the war started. And everyone says, don't do anything about it. Soak it up, you're not. It says, come speak at church. Anyways, it was a daily thing. Before the Iron Dome was set up, it was a lot more often. Now they know that it's a waste of their efforts because we do a good job.
So today, you're here. Are they still receiving missiles and things?
So I'll tell you a secret. Right now, you can look in the news, no. You can ask an Israeli, no. But when I wake up in the morning and I go into the command center, that somebody's sitting there, and I would ask him, hey, how was the night? He's not allowed to tell me, but sometimes there are 2 or 3 mortar shells that don't land into Israel. They land in the sea, that don't make it past the border of Gaza. So our sirens don't go off and our news don't cover it, but they're still firing. And it's usually that one guy who wants to make a spark and he fails. But since the operation, there hasn't been any other rocket fire directly into a city, but there have been quite a few mortar shells or rockets attempted.
Do they come for the most part from the Gaza Strip?
Yeah.
And not from the West Bank?
No, the West Bank is pretty much demilitarized. We're talking smaller villages and Bedouins and Arabs that are on the border of Jordan, which is our ally, and we work together. And right now, Israel is in a joint working together with Israel and Jordan are working together to fight against ISIS, which is also inside their border. The Air Force have been working together, and Jordan won't allow those weapons to cross the border. However, the Gaza Strip is on the border of Egypt and Sinai, and the whole border is not protected, and many weapons and munitions come into the country. Now, the West Bank is safer, it's quieter, it still has its own organization that is terrorist, And most of the people that you hear stabbings, if you hear explosions in Israel now, which is still happening, come from the West Bank. Because it's less defended. Gaza is now demilitarized. There aren't any Israelis in there at most times, unless there's an operation or something, and there's a fence. So the rockets coming over.
There's a fence.
There's a fence.
The United States has its own issues with a fence.
Yes.
Is that fence, is it adequate? I mean, is it useful?
It's a good question. There are cement parts, high parts in some areas closer to towns so that they can't shoot it straight across. Now, if we went way back, talking about 72 in the Yom Kippur, we call it the war, in the north, they would shoot from the mountains into Israel. They would shoot from their town, from a window, into another home. Because you can drive down the highway and see Gaza, you can see the city. It's not so far away. So we have to have those walls, not just to keep people out. I mean, people come in and work all the time, it's fine. But because literally you will have someone shoot from one window to the next, because they're that close. And even though I don't want to sound like I'm one-sided, Israel's never done that back. You'll never imagine someone coming to his house and saying, I hate those Arabs, let's just start shooting at them. I went there with an open mind. And I have a lot of Arab friends and a lot of Muslim friends. But facts are the facts.
Is this wall high enough then?
In some areas. In some areas,
They can't shoot?
rockets, no.
No, I mean from one window to the other?
Yeah, no, not in that area anymore. There are still settlements that are nearby. Not settlements, it's in Israel. Usually we use the word settlement here as a place that's inside an open area in the West Bank. So these are inside of Israel in the desert. There are kibbutzim, little towns, like a kibbutz, yeah, right around Gaza. So I want to move on, because I don't want to take everyone's time, there's a little bit more. But if there's any questions at the end, I can answer personally, or is it okay? All right. So here's a few more pictures during my time in the army. This is in a yeshuv, which is like a small town of 60 families. Also in the West Bank, we were there during the holidays, people brought us food. There were Bedouins next door that would come and visit us, the soldiers, and talk with us. And it was our job to protect and also to bring in the Bedouins from their neighboring town safely, because there's also a fence around this community. And this is my buddy. Interesting story. He's part of what they call in Israel the Black Hebrews, which were a Christian group that came from Ann Arbor and Pittsburgh and all the area in the Midwest pretty much, black churches. And once somebody came up and said, we're one of the lost tribes of Israel. And they proved it through a few different things. The main point was when the African Americans were in the western part of Africa still, before they were brought over, and what they all talk about slavery, they were speaking about Jerusalem, they were speaking about the Jericho before anybody got there to speak to them about Christianity. So they say, we have roots in Israel. So they moved back in the 60s. This is also part of looking for, we had all the problems, I'm trying to think of the right word for it, but the racial problems we had in the States, they moved to Israel looking for a safer place. And he speaks English like anybody else that I know here, but he has no idea about American culture, and he was born in Israel.
He has a little bit of different dialect that the Israelis have a hard time with.
Well, the Israelis don't understand him because he sounds like, our neighbors here.
Detroit.
Yeah. So it's very interesting, and it was very fun to learn from him. His name is Avigdor. This is my buddy Chatler, Daniel Chatler. He was born in Baltimore and moved there. He's 26, and he served in the military just starting off. He's a lot older than the other guys, so most of them call him Grandpa. He's 26. And this is where we actually went to the Knesset, the parliament building in Israel, and we were asked to light candles for Hanukkah, the lone soldiers. I didn't talk about it before, but a lone soldier is what I would have been called there. It's a soldier who serves without any immediate family in the country. So I'm there by myself, I have to fund myself, feed myself, everything else. But there's so many ways that people help us. I never had a meal that I was alone pretty much. And I'm given more money from the army and from friends and from families, from my synagogue, from everything. So we were asked to come and speak, just to light the candles and be part of this big celebration. And here is when we were stationed up in the north. It's also very hard to see, but you have two soldiers, Itzik and Yuval, friends of mine that we drafted together, putting up a flag in the middle of the night. I got to this base near Carmiel in the north in the mountains, and there's no flag. And to them, they really don't care. It's not a really big thing. We're all in Israel. It's not like we're crossing the border. We need to put a flag. But I thought it was really just strange for me to have a military base without a flag hanging over our head. So I made them go out, this is probably 2 in the morning right when we got there, and put this flag up with me in the front. So again, there are a lot of things that I had to teach them. They're patriotic, but they grew up there and they take it for granted. And I moved there with this dream of, I'm living in Jerusalem. I mean, who can say that they would go to Jerusalem and not feel something special? I have a lot of friends who say, why the heck do you live in Jerusalem? There's no parties there. Very different upbringing. So I started talking about lone soldiers. So here are a few pictures. They're not my pictures, but they're very similar to the things that I did. They will host meals for us on Friday nights, which is our holy day. They will bring us in for celebrations. Here is a Hanukkah year before. I think this is Thanksgiving Hanukkah. So she is actually cutting a turkey there, which is very special for an American because we don't celebrate Thanksgiving there. Every year I have to host it or bring in family or friends, my host family there, my family's not there, and celebrate Thanksgiving. And they love it because they never eat turkey. So. Okay. So I'm going to actually skip through this video. No, I'm going to show the beginning, but I might cut it off. This is a video that talks about lone soldiers, and it gives us an example of a few soldiers from around the world, and what it is for them to live in Israel. I'm going to cut off in the middle because it's a little long, and I don't have the time.
The Israel Defense Forces defend the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Service is compulsory for all Israelis between the ages of 18 and 21. Still, thousands of young Jews from around the world voluntarily enlist in the IDF every year as lone soldiers, whom the IDF depends upon for their renowned dedication and inspiration. And these lone soldiers depend on us.
Hi, my name is Ronaldo from Mexico. I was a lone soldier.
My name is Yoni Statberg. I made Aliyah from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania about a month ago.
My name is Craig. I made Aliyah from South Africa about 6 years ago. This is Yoni from Togo.
I'm Katie. I'm from Los Angeles, and I was a combat soldier in Oakens, the K9 unit of the IDF.
My name is Daniel Flesh. I'm from New Jersey. I was born here in Israel, like when I was young, and then I came back to be a lone soldier, serve the IDF, and live here.
The years a soldier spends in the Army are some of the most physically and emotionally trying years he or she will face. It is thanks to their families and communities that they are ready to take on the challenges that await them. Beyond the physical demands, soldiers face long periods of time away from their loved ones, nights without sleep, uncomfortable and dirty uniforms, emotional exhaustion, and loss of their independence. But for lone soldiers, the Army's perennial challenges can be uniquely disruptive.
So what ends up happening is we keep calling each other, whoever gets here first makes the mad dash to the supermarket, buys whatever food they can, and if we're lucky we get a warm Shabbat meal, but that doesn't always happen.
Alright, I'm going to stop it here. This is going to go on and talk about all the problems that we have. I was lucky, I had a lot of family there, friends that I met along the way that supported me, that if I needed to do laundry I could come to their house, that if I was ever hungry. In the end I ended up hosting people, because I met a lot of lone soldiers that weren't as lucky, that didn't have a house for months. And I slept on the ground for 2 months in my house, I didn't have a bed. And that was okay. But these guys didn't have an apartment, they didn't have the money, and so I hosted them as well. So all the soldiers that we just saw here, I only know one of them, he's a little bit later, but they all drafted within the last few years. And like me, they were there in a new place. Some of them don't speak the language. Some of them didn't come with money from home. And they get into the Army. The Army takes care of us pretty well. And the thing they won't talk about here, because they don't know it yet, but the hardest part is getting out of the Army there. 50% of the lone soldiers move back to their homes because the government no longer helps them, and they kind of just fall through the chair or fall through the cracks. Thank you. There's a lot of words that I translate to Hebrew now. It's a problem. And they're not supported. So I'm gonna keep it moving.
Actually, Dan has Israeli parents in the north and in the south, so he's very.
I'm coming to visit soon.
Yeah.
50% of the lone soldiers move back.
Yes.
Are you gonna be part of that 50%?
No.
You plan on living in Israel?
When you move to Israel, if you're a Jew and you move to Israel at a young enough age, they give you 100% scholarship. I'm going to school there for free.
And then when
And
you're
I'll
through,
support it.
are you planning on calling Israel your home? I don't know
If
what
you
the
ask my grandma, she'll
50%.
say no.
You ask his mom.
If you ask his mom or anybody else,
It just
the question-
depends on the women, you know, if he finds an American woman or an Israeli woman. I mean,
that's a good point. I get school there right now, 4 years paid for. Plus I'll get supported through other studies. I want to do my master's back here. And I won't go into it too deeply, but I want to study Jewish communal service, which will get me into bringing people to Israel and strengthening the communities here and abroad. So I don't know. I see myself living in Israel. I feel like it's my home, but there's a lot more here.
You just said they fall through the cracks. I didn't know if Israel's making you sounded like Israel wasn't making a concerted effort to retain
Well, you have-
these young people.
While I was serving, there were about...
But you're not falling through the cracks.
No.
It's simply the time comes to an end, and
Yes.
then they have to make a choice. Do I want to?
Yeah, well, that's
continue?
true. But also, I had friends that were in Israel. They were traveling around after the army, just going on hikes, getting around for 2 months, and suddenly they get a check saying, you owe, 1,000 shekels of back taxes, because they didn't know how it worked. Because you have to go in and sign these papers, and no one talks to you. As lone soldiers, we're lucky. A lot of people will help us, and they'll tell us, what do you need to do? How do you need to get signed up for healthcare? All of these things. But we had 5,500 soldiers. Now, I'm not saying it's a good big number, and it's easy. It's hard to take care of them. But only a few of them get out every few months, and nobody remembers that they're there. You get out of the army, maybe they'll ask you to speak somewhere once or twice, and then you're on your own. And if
Just like it is here. When you're time, so you start a job, you begin your life.
But here you have your parents and you can move back and you say, hey Dad, how do I do my taxes? Or hey Dad, do you know what this word means? My dad has no idea. He has no idea what these Hebrew things are, how taxes work. I have to pay taxes there while I'm here, like a national tax. There are so many things that are not understandable and I've started to learn them, and I have 2 families that have been taking care of me, that have brought me through this. But a lot of people there are quieter, they're not as outgoing. They do their service and they take care of themselves and they're quiet, and they don't learn these things. So I'm lucky and I help a lot of people. I'm in touch with 3 people that are drafting in the next couple of months, and I'm talking to them all the time what they need to do immediately, so get these papers filled out, get all this. So I've been trying to pass on the torch. I have a short clip here, and this is pretty much the end of my military talk. This is from the operation. This last summer, Operation Protective Edge. This shows soldiers, Israelis, not lone soldiers, not Americans or anything else, with good English, talking about what the operation was. And they will talk about the Iron Dome here. And the woman who's talking is my deputy commander from my base. And all of the background that she is my field, where I was working.
On our broadcast tonight on The Break, Israelis running for cover as bomb shelters open, and Israel calls up 40,000 reserves.
The city of Jerusalem came under rocket attack. It happened literally seconds ago.
I'm Lieutenant and I'm a Deputy Commander in an Iron Dome battery.
I'm a Major in Engineering Core Unit. I command a special operation to find and blow up terrorist tunnels.
I'm Reserve Paramedic in the Special Unit of the Nachal Brigade.
As a commander in the IDF, for me it's a privilege to protect my home, to protect my land, to protect the whole Jewish nation.
During Operation Protective Edge, I was the commander of the rescue company responsible to evacuate the wounded and the casualties during the war.
I'm 20 years old. My base is here in the Iran Strip.
A short time ago, Israeli officials reported an attempt by militants to invade southern Israel by sea.
At the first day of Protective Edge, 2 scuba divers, the commander of the FAMAS, came through the water and started to run towards our base. When something like that happened, you don't have time to think. Me and other officers ran to the fighting zone and we started exchange of fire. And actually we killed them.
last 24 hours, we've had 130 rockets that have targeted our civilians.
Every time people ask me about Iron Dome, I like to emphasize that behind this system there is a man or a woman making sure the job is done. You have to react on time, you have to make the right decision. It's a matter of a few seconds. When you see a target on the screen, you can also see where it's potentially going to fall. So you know that each rocket that you're intercepting could hit a house, family, children.
What is fear? How do you deal with fear?
In this extreme situation, I want to believe that I made the right decision.
It's like I had someone back me yelling, where's Ada? Where's Ada? Ada is missing. And that's when I understood that I was kidnapped.
The moment I heard that my brother is the missing soldier, I right away wanted to go back and help. My brother we're dealing with.
But when we entered the tunnel, it was very dark. We barely saw anything, except for a trail of blood, so I know exactly where I need to go. I told Lieutenant Shaquette, wait for 5 minutes. If I don't come back, I'm probably dead.
This is the longest 5 minutes of my life. I didn't ever watch.
I heard Shaquette yelling to me, we have to get out of the tunnel, we have to get out. I thought I was dead.
When I first understood that he is gone, I felt something is missing.
These tunnels were extremely dangerous and we have to stop it.
And the Hamas terrorists blow a huge ID under the specific place that Ori stand inside the tunnel.
Play.
Okay, I'm gonna stop it. I think it's getting a little late. So this was the last operation. It's a little tough. It's another video. But you see the age of these soldiers, and most of these were officers who you saw here. The woman that was speaking for the Iron Dome is 22. Her name is Lee, and she was my officer, especially when I became a sergeant, so she was in charge of me and making sure that all the squads were working together. She speaks good English, and that's really important, because all the time people are visiting my base, whether it's members of Congress, whether it's the German Air Force, whether it's from South Korea, or just American groups that want to come in. A lot of church groups actually come to visit us while they're doing a mission trip in Israel. And it was one of my jobs, which was I was lucky enough to speak good English and to meet these people, to explain to them what we do. I want to show you this operation because, yes, that's what I had to go through. The soldiers that came onto the beach was about 3 kilometers from my base, so you could hear the gunshots. But we ended this war very quickly. And a lot of it was thanks to the Iron Dome, that we could stop all these rockets that landed into major cities, Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. So afterwards, we kind of got back into a more comfortable, relaxing time. We could do more training with our soldiers. We weren't moving all the time. Because the important thing to know, like I said before, the Iron Dome is mobile. So in the beginning, we had to move it from the south to the north, or the north to the south, within a matter of hours, in order to protect both borders. So we're moving all the time. Basically, we lost things along the way. Soldiers didn't get their training. We didn't get to do our target practice. We didn't do the things we usually did on a regular day. We got back into training. When I became a sergeant, this is my officer. She was also 2 years older than me. No, sorry, 2 years younger than me. And these are my soldiers on our first march. This was actually at the end of the operation. They brought us out of our base, and they took the entire base away, but they didn't have the truck to take us away yet. So we sat outside under a tarp in the desert for 5 hours. And then these are 2 more of my soldiers that after I had a picture of myself putting up a flag, I saw them putting a flag up one day without me saying anything. So I took a picture of them, and it was really meaningful for me.
How large is that strip? How many miles by how many
The Gaza
miles?
Strip?
Gaza Strip.
It's hard for me to say, but I think it's about, I don't know, 70 kilometers. I know kilometers. So 70 kilometers.
45 miles.
Yeah, about 45 miles, I think, but it's also pretty wide. I think it's about 15, 20 miles wide. I could be completely wrong with this. So I would say look it up afterwards.
It's not a very large area.
It's not very large, and the sad thing is that when Israel pulled out of Gaza, pulled out all of its citizens in order to give it for a peace process, there were resorts. Gaza was one of the nicest places. You can see these huge, beautiful hotels now that when they came in, they pulled bulldozers and crushed it all. They said, we don't want anything here that's Jewish, nothing that's Israeli, nothing that shows us what it used to be. And now they complain that they don't have room to live and that they're living in ruins. And I'm not living there. I don't know the 100% what it's like. I do know that we provide them all of their electricity, even during war. They knocked down a tower with their rockets. They knocked down the power line. They gave power to their entire country. Now, we're not just talking about civilians that are sitting at home watching TV. We're talking about hospitals. You're talking about nursing homes. You're talking about places that you need power. And they knocked it down, and we fixed it within a few weeks. We took our time. And we gave them back power. When I was working on the farm, we gave a portion of the fruits went to Gaza. I don't know how it is to live there, and I'm sure it's tough because their government is not helping them, and they're living in very dense, condensed population, big buildings with 20 families in them, in single one-family homes. It's very difficult, but Israel can't provide them with everything. UN gives them money. I think the last number I saw, it was $5 or $6 million that was given in funds, and they found that amount in cement in these tunnels. And people are being taken care of. And there
they don't carry on manufacturing or any.
No, they haven't. They haven't built an infrastructure there, and there are funds going in, and there are people trying to get in, and it's really difficult. And they don't want the help. They want to take care of themselves, but they can't, and they can't grow their own food hardly. And they're using their money to, or the government, or their type of government is using the funds to wage war. So it's very difficult, and it's a very hot topic, and I don't know the answer. All I know is to tell my friends not to be prejudiced, because most of them just say, I don't want Arabs living in my town, and they go back to the same way that they're being treated, and it's very hard to be an Israeli born with that point of view that all you know is they're the enemy.
It's 139 square miles.
So less than I thought, yeah. All right. These are some of my soldiers from different squads. I actually did the same drill with them each time they came to me, different soldiers, different groups. So this was a fun one. Took them out in the field, had them search. There was rocket fire. They'd have to lay down. After a while, somebody was injured. They have to carry them back. We call this the Jeep carry. They never heard about this, and I learned it from my officers at a different base. To have two people in the back, one in the front, to carry someone instead of carrying them over your shoulder. If it was, like here we had 3 girls, they couldn't carry this guy by themselves. So, anyways, some of the training I got to do with my soldiers.
How many soldiers did you have at the time?
In the beginning, when I first came in, I was with an older group. They'd already gone through 4 months, and some of them went off to be commanders. So I only had 5 or 6. Second time I had 16.
So that's how many soldiers are
in a squad
or in a battery?
Yeah, well, in a launch site. Yep.
Just to be clear, even if you decide against your grandmother's wishes to live in Islam, you are done with the army.
Good question.
No.
I'm done with my active service. I have reserve duty, as does anybody else there that does not have some kind of condition, and some women get out of it for different reasons, or if you start a family at a young age, until I'm about 40 or 50.
So they could call you.
They can call me back, and they most likely will.
At any time.
At any time. If I'm living here, they can send me a letter. I don't have to answer. Nothing will happen if I don't answer. If I'm living in Israel and they send me a letter, I can there's a few excuses. I'm studying, there's big tests, and I can ask if I can get out. But there are different levels of a draft notice. There's like a level 6, and that's kind of if you have the time. And there's a level 8 where if you don't show up, you're going to be put into prison. And it's usually after the operation because they don't have time to look for you now. But I would always go. There's no reason for me not to. And I was serving here with, they said, what was it, 50,000 reservists. So the 5 bases, my base was brought in with reservists, and these soldiers are in college, or they're students, or they're professors, or they have a life, and they have children, and they have everything else, and they're sitting out here with me. Now luckily, they don't follow the same rules as me that I have to, so they have a barbecue every night, they'll watch soccer when they're not guarding, and we had a good time.
You know what the approximate casualty, daily casualty is?
During the operation, or now?
No, let's see.
Now, like I said, now it's quiet. There isn't any rocket fire coming in, other than there's misfires once in a while. And on the other side, we don't have soldiers that are coming in. Every couple of days, you will hear about something, shooting here or there. In the north, there was an anti-tank missile that was a rocket that was shot into a tank near us, and there were a few killed. And me, by 3 degrees, I knew the guy. So we're all very connected there. And you will hear everything. Here, you'll only hear about the bad things. Over there, anytime anything happens, the whole country knows, because it's a country of 9 million, not including the settlements, so we don't know exactly the number. So let's say 11 million altogether. So if somebody is killed in an operation, or if somebody, if there's an accident, everybody knows. Everyone knows. So that's the interesting thing. People say it's so dangerous in Israel. Why would you send your children there? And I'm trying to, right now, we're working on trying to bring some more of our youth over there to visit. They say, how could you live there? I live in Benton Harbor, Michigan. And the amount of violence that you see in that town, or in any other inner city area in the States, is nothing like here. Yes, you hear in the news that something happens, and the whole country hears about it, so it sounds like a bigger thing. But how many people in Detroit know what's going on in Benton Harbor every day? We're not as connected here when it comes to these things, because we don't need to be. We don't have. It's a family there. The Army is not based on honor, on you're my officer, I have to listen to you. You're a family and you take care of each other, because it's your home, and if you fail, you lost your home. There is no second chance. So that's one thing I like to say to people when they say how dangerous it is over there. I've never felt safer. There's nothing else to say about it. Before I move on, I told you that I didn't have an answer for people when they said, why did I want to stay in Israel? Why didn't I go back to the States? Why am I not on the beach? Why am I not doing this and that? And when I was in my commander's school, the head of the base came out and he started asking people, how many people were born out of the country? There were about 12 people. And so we asked him where they're from, and everyone's answering him. He's a real important guy, big guy with a lot of things on his shoulder here. Straightforward and rude, and then they'll say what's on their mind. So then he says, how many people after their service want to move out of the country? Just about the same amount of people, but different hands each time. 12 more people, a lot of them Israelis. So we asked them why. People started giving their answers. Oh, it's expensive here, and the healthcare system is terrible. Everyone there has healthcare, but I've never seen a television inside of a hospital, except for in the lobby. And you have 5 people in a room, just so I can give a little perspective. And he says, it's just awful, and I want to travel, and I want to see the world, and everything here is war, and everything here is bad, and it's all desert. Everybody has these answers for him. So finally he asked one guy, he says, do you have parents here? He says, yeah, I live with my mom. Didn't get too much into it. Is your mom beautiful? Of course, most beautiful. You go on and on. Israelis don't ever talk about their mothers. Is your mom smart? Does she have good values? Does she take care of you? Yes, yes, yes. The guy's getting a little frustrated. What do you want from me? My mother's the best. Are there other women that are more beautiful than your mother? He said, I suppose, maybe. Are there others that had more education, that could be a little bit smarter than your mom, that have higher values, higher standards? He said, yes, 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 what do you want? There are plenty of other countries in the world that have more money, that it's easier to live in, and that feel better. But for these people, and for me, Israel is mom, Israel is home. And they finally kind of got an understanding, and the whole room was quiet. And that's one thing. I could move to Canada, I could move to New Zealand, I could stay here, and I will always feel good, and here I love the food, and I feel like it's cheaper, but I didn't have that same feeling as a country that took care of me and that cared. And they really care for its civilians. And for its, not civilians, its citizens. Yeah.
How much weight have you gained since you got back?
Oh, I've gained a lot of weight since I got back. It's winter. Give me a minute. All right. So before I go on, I just want to say that, or before I finish, we're a lot more than soldiers. While I was there, like I said before, we were a family. This is my first officer, also Daniel. And sitting on his left is me, Daniel, and on his right, Daniel. A lot of Daniels there. We went by our last name. And Avigdor, the guy I was talking about, this is at his house during Hanukkah. They invited us over there after I was at the Knesset. He invited me there. Mother cooked for us, and we drank, and we lit candles, and we played guitar, and it was just wonderful. It was a family. And this is my officer. I mean, the guy on a regular basis that's kicking my butt and making me crawl through the dirt. This is my whole squad, my beginning squad. When my dad came to visit, I brought pizza back because I was on a break, so I came back and visited them.
And what was on that pizza?
Oh, they like to put tuna on their pizza, and they like to put corn on their pizza. Not everybody likes it, but it's something you never see here. Yeah, they don't do pineapple. I like that. It's good. It's okay. And then this is the picture of him when he was Daniel Chatler that was lighting the candle at the Knesset. So while we were there as soldiers, it was so much more. I didn't feel like I was a soldier going to base and back all the time. It was going back to my family. When I came back here, I visited for, every year, the Army gave me some time to come back and visit. So I was here for either a month or a couple of weeks. And every time I came back, I missed them there too. And it wasn't like I missed the work. It was really family. It was really something more. We're not alone. As soldiers, we were supported by everyone. Whether it was the guys living next door in the house that we were protecting, or it was a group that came to donate food to us or to bring us funds, or the Iron Dome itself, which is funded 50% at least 50% by the United States. This is during one of our holidays, Purim, the story of Esther, where we give away gift baskets. And this is from the one time that somebody came. I got a picture of a table from here to the ceiling with candy and snacks, and oh, it hurt. But so good. As soon as I came back from the States, my last trip, they took us to the Army Resort. We do have a few Army resorts. They give us a break once in a while. There's a pool, there's sports, do concerts. And there's one called the Michigan House, which was, all this place was donated by different people. Each building has its name, and I was sleeping in the Michigan House, which was just cool. All of them by donors. They just wanted to help out as much as they could. And this is my last day in the Army. This is my last squad. I'm here in the center, different colored pants because I was going home. I was wearing my nice uniform. And somebody donated us sweatshirts. All of them with our unit on the back and a sentence that we had asked for. Really nice. And that's just how people work there. And not just there, here and across the world. So there are different programs that I was involved in, I'm going to stay involved in. Friends of the IDF was surprising because they asked me to come speak once at a dinner. So I came and just introduced myself, talked about the Army, and she asked, what is this guy saying? Because there's a rabbi, he's doing a blessing over the wine. And there's a few things that, we as Jews know these very simple things. I said, oh, he's doing the blessing over the wine. Oh, well, what is he doing with the candles? Well, why can't we take pictures? And they didn't mention to me that this was a Christian group. I had no idea. And they were here with the donating group the presidential group, the people who donate money, crazy. And so I got to go around and speak. And so I've met so many different groups and gotten to speak to so many people that I had no idea were connected to Israel or cared. Because it's not just about the Jews. It's not just about religious groups either. Israel is a center, I like to say center of the world, but Israel is a center for so much today. And it's just been my pleasure and my honor to live there and to become part of it, to bring a little bit back with me. So.
How long are you here and when do you back?
I'm here now until the summer, and then I'm going to work at a summer camp I used to go to as a kid, as a unit head, and then I will be flying back to school there in the fall. It's probably about the beginning of September.
What are the temperatures like?
Oh, it's so much warmer there. It's in the 80s right now, 90s I think. But in the winter, I would call home and I would complain. I said, oh, it's so cold, and I'd have to watch the thermometer. This was, December or January, and I'm freezing because I'm out there for 4 hours sitting in this little tent. And they said, well, how cold is it? Because, here it was probably -5 or whatever. It was like 50. I was freezing. I couldn't take it. And I got very used to it. It's much warmer there year-round. They do get snow in the mountains, but not every year.
And up to 100? it's time for a nice hot drink.
Yeah.
Oh.
It gets to about 130, 140 in different places in the desert.
Wow.
Yeah. And I served in the south in Eilat, which is the southern tip on the Red Sea. And it was like 135 some days. We still have to wear all the uniform. We can take our vest down every once in a while to breathe.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that you were in the middle of a Christian group. And of course in America we always hear how the Christian Jewish nation does not get along with the regular Jewish nation. Is that actually a reality, or is that...
Okay, so you mean the Christian Israelis, the Christians that are living
Right,
there?
Christians.
Yes.
Do
So,
they get along as well in the Jewish
Yeah, I'm trying to
nation in Israel?
yeah, to be honest, I've never seen any type of problem. Me personally, I live in Jerusalem, and I was there during Christmas with all the parades. Inside of Israel, I've never seen it. I have heard, and it is different. And my soldiers have no idea anything about Christianity. I had to teach them. We were in class, and we had to learn about Christmas, and we had to learn about Easter in order to pass the course. And they had no idea, and I had to teach them. So, yeah.
Daniel, I have a question, and it requires me to do a little reading here, if that's okay with you.
Of course.
Okay. Now we know there is the Iron Dome is a wonderful thing, and we're thankful for it. We pray for them. We pray for Israel all the time. But there is something above the Iron Dome that cannot be stopped, and that is the Lord God is over it all. You know? And they do a wonderful job protecting the people here. But the Lord God has higher things in mind, and there's some amazing things He said in His Word. Isaiah 66, verse 7, before she was in labor, she gave birth. Before her pain came, she delivered a male child. Who has heard such a thing? Who has seen such things? Shall the earth be made to give birth in one day, or shall a nation be born at once? For as soon as Zion was in labor, she gave birth to her children. Shall I bring to the time of birth and not cause delivery, says the Lord? So God is doing miraculous things, and He's doing miraculous things in Israel. Above all that wonderful technology, there is a finger of God that is guiding those anti-missile things. And His presence is so many ways seen there. And another thing amazes me is the prophecy that God has given concerning Israel in the book of Zechariah. And it shall come to pass in all the land, says the Lord, that 2/3 in it shall be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left in it. I will bring the 1/3 through the fire. I will refine them as silver is refined, and test them as gold is tested. They will call on my name, and I will answer them. I will say, this is my people. And each one will say, the Lord is my God. And a little further in chapter 14, verse 4, and in that day his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which faces Jerusalem on the east, and the Mount of Olives shall be split in two from east to west, making a very large valley. Half of the mountain shall move towards the north and half towards the south. Going to rearrange your whole your landscape. And then you shall flee through it, my mountain valley, for the mountain valley shall reach to Azel. Yes, you shall flee as you fled from the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Thus the Lord my God will come, and all the saints with you. It shall come to pass in that day that there will be no light, the lights will diminish. It shall be one day which is known to the Lord, neither day nor night, but at evening it shall happen that it will be light. And these are just a few of the descriptions of the coming of the Messiah. And we know, we Christians, we have our view of the coming of the Lord Jesus. We think it's going to be His second coming. But these dear Jewish people, they are looking for the first coming of the Messiah. And what I want to ask, I'm taking a long time getting up to my question, but in this, I can't help, I can't stop that business. But in this country, the Christian people think that the time is coming very near. We look at the way things are going in this world, and we can't deny that the great tribulation and all that we have to face yet, all these things are coming. And now we look at the people of the Jewish faith, and they are looking for the first coming of the Messiah. And apparently, if I understand it right, they have to go through a tough time to get there. A tough time, difficult time, worse than the war. And I think of ourselves, our Christian faith, we say this country is not ready. Not ready. It's well defended, but it's not ready for the second coming of Christ. And what I wonder is about you, living there in Israel, what would you say about Israel? What is their spiritual state? Where is the country headed? Is it reviving the faith, or is it slipping away? What would be your assessment of that?
Sure.
I know this is not a military question,
no,
but it is a military question.
Well, I'm not only about the military, so I learned a lot about Jewish and Israeli history. You know, Israel has only been a state for 67, 68 years. And in the beginning, it was these people with this big idea of coming back and taking back Israel and making a new nation and making it a holy nation and spiritual. And one of the first things that the leader said is, if you've ever seen a picture of, you heard, there are the religious Jews who will grow their side locks down real long. So they'll be curly. So somebody said, cut off your side locks, pick up a plowshare, and start farming. And so one of the first things that when we moved to Israel, they said, religion is great, but we need to get a country made. And they told all the religious that wouldn't work, we got to work. And afterwards, people got very upset, and they made this big split. And since then, the government and the country has been very split between the secular and the religious Jews until today. I went there, and I felt I was religious. And you can see I'm somewhere in the middle, because I'm not wearing a black hat, and I'm not wearing a complete, traditional Jewish garb, I guess. And they've kind of separated themselves. And then there's the others that were born in Israel, and their grandparents were born in Israel, and their great-grandparents, and they're very connected, but they don't feel that Judaism was part of that. And so they're over here. And over the last 6 years that I've been there, I see that the government, when it comes to voting, when it comes to any kind of policy, it's very split. Whether we want to make peace or we want to wipe them out, whether we want to make a two-state solution or if we're not ready, it's very split between the religion. However, in the last 6 years, I've seen it come together a lot. I am part of a synagogue there, and the country is finally accepting other forms of Judaism. In the beginning, it was only the Orthodox. There's only one way to practice. But there are so many people that still feel connected, but they don't follow these traditions that they brought back from Europe however long ago. I'm part of a Reformed synagogue there, Reconstructionist. And that's something that's brand new in the last 10 years. There's Ethiopian Jews coming in that for a long time we said they were not Jews, and that where do they have proof? If you don't know your mother's Jewish, you're not Jewish. And the country is accepting them and finally giving them citizenship as Jews and saying that they're part of it. And like my friend, the Black Hebrews, until 10 years ago didn't have citizenship. They lived there, they practiced their faith, but they weren't accepted or anything. The country is coming so much more understanding and letting everyone become a part. And instead of separating these two sides, you're religious or you're not. You're part of the country or you're not. They're starting to find that everybody has their religious, their religious soul, their religious inside, and that we can all live together. So my point and what I think is that we are getting closer, and that we are talking about it every day. We talk about the third temple being built, and it will come down in a pillar of fire, and God will give us the third temple. That way it will stand forever, no longer built by man, one of our symbols of the Messiah coming. And we feel like we're getting close.
If one of those enemy rockets happened to be headed right for that dome on the rock there, would the Israelis bring it down?
So I hope I answered your question to the best of my ability. You had a question?
You made a comment about they were not able, they could come there, the Ethiopians could come there and serve the military and whatever, but they couldn't be accepted as a citizen?
So in the beginning,
if you're not a Hebrew or not Jewish, you can't.
So
immigrate
it's
to-
complicated. To become a citizen, you have to be able to prove you're Jewish by one of your grandparents. So I could be not practicing, or both my parents could be of one faith, but one of my grandparents was Jewish. I could move to Israel. That's the law because there are some people who, because of the war, World War II, and because of the dispersion of the Jews, lost their real birth, their blood relatives, connections to the faith, but they can still prove they're Jewish because of something else. So there are plenty and a lot. There are a lot of Russians that move to Israel that don't have, they don't practice, they're Christian, but they want to live in Israel because it's easier for their family, better for their family. Russia apparently is not a good place to live, and that's what they say. And they will serve in the military, and it's difficult for them because a lot of the military is based on Judaism. But they have made. I had somebody told me earlier that a good friend of his son drafted the same time as his good friend's son, and his friend was Christian. He knew that, and it was very interesting to talk about it. And when we went to swear into the army, we're given, our Torah, our Bible, and our gun. And we have to make a swear that we're going to serve the military. And he had his priest come, and he swore on the Christian Bible. And it was something that we just hadn't seen as much, but it's very much possible to do. So the Ethiopians are now accepted and given citizenship. Not, some of them walk across the border, and it's kind of takes some time, but they are being accepted. But the other part of that is there are a lot of Jews that move to Israel to serve without becoming citizens. They are allowed to do that, not being citizens, finish their service, come back to the States or wherever they're from.
But only if you're Jewish.
Only if they're Jewish. You can't. Not anybody can just decide to go there. So, yeah.
I heard an interesting comment on the radio. I don't know the source. I'm assuming it's reliable. The altar for the new temple is already complete.
Yeah. Yep. That's something I was going to talk about before. Is talking about getting closer to that. There is the menorah, the candelabra, gold that they said they're going to put in the new temple, and they said that the altar they had built. They said we're getting ready. I pray that it's close. I have to say.
This might be a stupid question, but so if I should decide to move to Israel because my grandson is there and I want to be closer to him, I don't want him there. And I'm not Jewish. Could I be a citizen?
So I know that if you have a spouse or a child, I know that for certain that lives in Israel and you're not Jewish. I don't know how far back that goes. However, you can still apply for citizenship not being Jewish and you have.
So you can become a citizen.
Yeah.
You would just have to convince me first. And then you would have a child.
There we go. We'll just talk about it.
Are there any other questions? If not, you can ask me on the side later. I know it's getting late. You guys have other things to do.
Just real quick, like, Mom, when you went to Israel, what was it like? Just really quick. I mean, I swore I would never go to that awful country where all they do is fight,
So scared.
blow you up, and Daniel went there, and so I had to go.
Well, you know what? Daniel said it earlier. I never felt safer any place than in Israel. And there is a feeling when you first see Jerusalem, it's like, oh my goodness, God is here. And yeah, I mean, everywhere we went, there were soldiers. If we got on a bus to go somewhere, there were at least 2 or 3 soldiers on there with their weapons to protect us. So no, I never felt safer anywhere.
Yeah. That's one thing most people don't know. We take our guns home with us. No. I mean, my M16 had to be with me at all times. Took it home. Had to separate the lock, take out the pin, the firing pin, take out the magazine. But my gun was with me at all times.
What did you call it?
What? My gun?
What was its name?
Well, you have to have a name for your gun. This one was Shoshana. But
No.
which one? The first
What
one?
did you call your weapon?
You slept with your snuggle buddy.
I think you said this. I was making a joke, and yeah, they like to. Facebook is not for grandparents and their mothers. Because when I put on there, my new gun and everything's great. Oh, you're snuggle buddy. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm allowed to say this or not, but when your enemy, by his very roots and everything else, is determined to destroy you, And I personally don't believe there can ever be any peace between the two. And I know people are saying, you know, peace, 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 but way back there, Isaac and Ishmael, it started there, and it's not in fact, I think it's getting worse, this division. And I just wonder what it must be trying to deal with the people that say, you know, make peace with them.
It's difficult. I mean, we only make peace with our enemies, and it's very difficult. Especially, I said I went there, and all of my friends said, "You don't know what it's like. You know, you didn't grow up with a war. They're the enemy. They will always be the enemy. What do you mean you have an Arab friend?" And that's the problem today. It's less of what are our old beliefs and what started it, and it's that people are raised now feeling that the Arabs are the enemy. The government right now, Bibi Netanyahu, is right-sided in how he wants to keep a strong border, and that's what we need. You know, we don't have the ability right now to open up the borders, make a two-state solution when ISIS is on the door, when the Palestinians aren't looking for peace, and when we ask them for peace. When Israel was created, established, and we were working with the British, what are going to be the borders? 70% was given to Arabs. It was going to be an Arab state, including all of the north, and Israel was given most of the desert, and part of Tel Aviv, and part of Jerusalem. That was going to be the Jewish state. And the Arabs said, no, everything or nothing. They didn't want to share. So we hear about the two-state solution today, that's what's hard for me. We're not the ones who don't want a two-state solution. It's very difficult, and it's true. I don't see a solution. I told everyone we need to put big rockets underneath the land, pick it up, bring it over to Lake Michigan, because it'll fit. They'll have better neighbors. I get that all the time. Israel will fit in Lake Michigan. It's a small place. That's what we're talking about here. It takes 6 hours to travel north to south because of the mountains. It's a very small country.
Which is a 2-day trip for an Israeli.
Not melted into glass, so you can just set it there.
Yeah.
Melt the bottom into glass.
Well, I hope I give you guys a little bit better understanding of how the military works, politics, my life there, what could bring in a Midwestern American kid to live there. And if there's any other questions afterwards about anything other than the military, because I know I focused on it a lot,